Welcome to a spotlight discussion on sustainable proteins for the Bezos Earth Fund's AI for Climate and Nature Grand Challenge. My name is Rebecca Meyer. I'm an engagement manager at Luminary Labs. Luminary Labs is a strategy and innovation consultancy based in New York City, and we're supporting the Bezos Earth Fund on the administration of the Grand Challenge. And just for a little bit of context, the Grand Challenge is exploring new ideas for multiplying the impact of climate and nature efforts using modern AI. And the first round of this Grand Challenge will focus on sustainable proteins, power grid optimization, and biodiversity conservation, as well as other visionary wildcard solutions. Today's discussion will explore sustainable proteins specifically and consider opportunities for AI to multiply impact in this field. And I'm very fortunate today to be joined by Andy Jarvis, the Director of Future of Food at the Bezos Earth Fund. And Andy, I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
You introduced me for me. I'm Andy Jarvis. I'm the Director of the Future of Food, leading all of the food work within the Bezos Earth Fund.
Excellent. So Andy will answer a few questions that we have today and share his insights about sustainable proteins and about the Grand Challenge and opportunities for AI in this sector specifically. So let's jump in. The Bezos Earth Fund is committed to fighting climate change and protecting nature. And the Earth Fund works to do that and achieve that goal across a number of different bodies of work, including food. And so I'd love, Andy, to start by hearing you describe sustainable proteins specifically and how it fits into the broader mission of the Bezos Earth Fund.
Yeah. So when we look at climate and nature, food is one of the most important elements of our society that we have to take a look at. Food is 1/3 of global emissions. The food system is 60% of ice-free land. We've essentially terraformed our planet for our food system. And obviously that is delivering food for 8 billion people and soon to be 10 billion people, which is absolutely critical and important. But we have to do that in a more sustainable way as people's appetites grow, as population increases, the demands on food are increasing, and that is under a business as usual scenario just going to increase our emissions, and it's going to destroy more nature. So we need to rethink a little bit how our food systems function so that they are lower in emissions, so that they are occupying less land and delivering healthy food and tasty food, delicious food to 10 billion people. So that's why we look at food. Now, so we see this thing, you can't fix the climate unless you look at food, and you can't fix food unless you look at protein. That's because those big numbers that I just said, 1/3 of global emissions for food, well, half of that is for animal source foods, and 60% of ice-free land is for the food system, for production of food and agriculture. Well, more than 2/3 of that is for animal source food. So protein is at the heart of the challenges of sustainability in our food system. And so when we talk about sustainable protein, we take this approach of a yes and food system. Yes, it is livestock and animal source foods, and we're doing a lot of work to make that more sustainable. Reducing the methane emissions from livestock. We're also looking at practices like rotation and regenerative farming that will reduce the land footprint of animal source foods and reduce emissions as well. But that's not enough. We're also looking at alternative proteins, and that's recognizing that demand for animal source foods is projected to increase by 50%. So what we want to do is meet some of that growing demand with alternative proteins. That is meat or dairy products that kind of mimic meat and dairy, but are produced from sources like from plant-based proteins, from fermented proteins, or from even cultivated proteins, so cultured meat. So that's why we're interested in sustainable, that's what we call sustainable protein. And the focus area for this challenge is particularly looking at that alternative protein piece.
Great. And I know the Bezos Earth Fund has been doing a lot of work outside of the Grand Challenge, supporting sustainable protein with the Centers for Sustainable Protein. Can you talk a little bit about that work?
Yeah, well, we're fresh from releasing and launching now 2 of our Bezos Centers for Sustainable Protein. These are global R&D centers in universities. The first one was North Carolina State. We've just announced also Imperial College London. These are 5-year plans where we're tapping into the best R&D capacity in some of the top universities around the world to look at alternative proteins in a range of things, everything from their manufacturing down to the cell lines and the genetics that we're using. They're centers which are designed to be very much integrating with the sector, working with companies, responding to the demand for research and knowledge generation and new ways of doing things. Their ultimate goal is also the ultimate goal for this focus area is how can we make alternative proteins cheaper, tastier, more delicious for consumers and delivering health and nutrition for the planet and for people.
Terrific. A lot of you've touched on this a little bit already, but a lot of the conversation in this space has focused on lab-grown meat, and we've gotten a lot of questions about what's encompassed within sustainable proteins. Could you talk a little bit about how you think about the boundaries of this space, sort of what's included in sustainable proteins and what might be separate from that?
Yeah, so in the call it talks about sustainable protein writ large. The focus area that is in there really then, if you look at the one pager with the kind of a little bit more detail on the scope, there it is talking about what generally people call alternative proteins, and that could be plant-based, it could be fermented, or it could be cultivated. But the idea is it's from, it's non-animal sourced products. It's looking at mimicking meat and dairy, but not coming from animals. That's the focus area, kind of domain. But that's not to say that livestock's off the table. There's also the fourth focus area, which is the wild card. If you have great ideas on livestock, that is also part of our sustainable protein approach, and would be in scope in the wild card area.
Terrific. I'd like to move into barriers to talk a little bit more about what's holding back progress in this space. So the impact of the Grand Challenge starts with first understanding the problem and sort of what's holding back progress in climate and nature in general, and then of course where AI solutions might be able to accelerate progress. So in your view, I'd love to hear what you think of as the greatest barriers holding back transformative impact in sustainable proteins at this point in time.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're the eyes on the prize, essentially. We're not about advocating of what people should eat. That's for, it's individual choice. What we're after is just making sure that when you do go to the market or the supermarket, you have a wide array of sustainable options available to you, right? And not just that they're available to you, but they're attractive for you. And so that for consumers means that they're cheap, they're at the price that, they're at price parity, they're tasty and delicious, and that they're delivering, health and nutrition. They're doing you good, not bad. And so that's the eye on the prize is how do we get there? And in the world of alternative proteins, I think I've said several times, we're early in this journey. This is a new technology. And, it's only, it's less than 15 years ago, really, where this really became a thing. And we're early in the journey. These products that you're seeing today are early generational products, and they continue to be improved. But they'll really only hit the mainstream when they are hitting that price parity and they're hitting that taste parity. The evidence shows that, with a few exceptions on a few very specific product lines, we're not there yet. And so that's where, that's the challenge that we need to overcome. How do we get there? And we do believe that AI could be transformational as a technology in helping us get there. It's an incredibly complicated thing to mimic flavor and taste and texture, smell, all of these things of meat and dairy products and the vast array of different products that are out there. But the building blocks are interesting. I mean, the building blocks for meat, for example, it's proteins, it's sugars, it's fats, it's minerals, things like that. And if we look at plants and crops and agricultural products, what are they made of? Well, they're made of proteins and fats and sugars and minerals. So, the basic building blocks are there, but there's 200 million different proteins out there. Just in our human bodies, we have 100,000 different protein types. Getting the right combinations that can do that mimicry is complicated, right? And so, I think up till now, and well, I'm not sure, I'm probably short shrifting the sector, but many of these approaches have been kind of almost cooking experiments. How do we combine this with that, and in these ways, and lots of science and research and going into it to develop a product. I think the opportunity is how can we actually do this kind of a precision cookery experiment here, where we really are understanding all of these structures and reconstructing in a way that we do nail taste, texture, smells, and we do nail the price parity. So, and do it in a very efficient manner that allows us to nail the price parity. I wanted to quote one thing. I was reading a fascinating story just yesterday, in fact, and it was about the protein folding problem, which I don't know if you've come across this, Rebecca.
Only a little bit. Tell me more.
So it was apparently for decades it had been a challenge of, can you predict essentially when a protein folds, can you predict the structure, and it was a computational challenge to be able to predict that in a simple way. And in 2020, kind of out of nowhere, every year there was a conference and they would kind of look at progress on this, and people would try and do it and fail. And in 2020, there was like a solution. It kind of like suddenly did it, and it came from Google's DeepMind. It was this thing called AlphaFold, and it solved it. And there's a quote on this article that I was reading, and it said it's the biggest machine learning in science story that there has been. And that was from Mohammed Al-Quraishi from Columbia University. So that it just shows. I mean, proteins are incredibly complicated. To understand the structures, the way they bind, all of these kinds of things. It's just right. It's perfect for understanding using AI because of that complexity. So that's why we get excited. We've already seen on the market there are products that capture, albeit at greater price maybe today, but they are capturing that taste. They're getting texture right. There are elements, we have pieces that have shown that this is possible. It is a surmountable problem. It is solvable. And we see AI as an opportunity just to accelerate that progress, to boost it, to do it much more directly rather than the winding path of kind of trial and error and experiment.
I love the protein folding example because I think it also speaks to something similar that we hope to see in this challenge, which is we don't actually know what the solutions are going to look like, right? Like, we are putting out this call and we want to see the most innovative, creative solutions that we may not have been able to come up with ourselves, presumably. And maybe we can shift and talk a little bit about the opportunity with that in mind. So, ultimately, we're hoping to use AI to drive impact, or explore whether AI might be able to be helpful in driving transformational impact in climate and nature, and of course in sustainable proteins specifically. I'd love to hear from you what you're hoping to see as a result of the grand challenge that's different from what you're seeing today.
Well, if we knew what we wanted to see, then we wouldn't have a grand challenge. Then you could be. What I want to see is actually be surprised, and so as much as I might have some ideas of what we could do, the best outcome is that it's something that I haven't thought about, that we haven't thought about in the Bezos Earth Fund. And that's the very reason why we do these kinds of innovation challenges. It's to get new ideas and bring new people and new disciplines into the fold to think about this and solve it in new ways that no one else has thought about. So that's the first thing is what I hope to be is surprised and surprised with some really innovative new ways of doing things. I mean, some of the things that we have thought where it might be useful, I just name a few. For example, I've talked about this kind of formulation side of things. How do you combine different ingredients to get those tastes and textures right? It could be re-engineering proteins and, along the lines of this protein folding thing. There's all sorts of genetics behind this, especially when you're looking at fermentation and cultivated meat. We could be looking at issues around the genetics of that, and how do we get that right to deliver the right textures, tastes, mouthfeels, all of these things. The feedstock, and then what feedstock are you providing, especially if you're looking at cultivated, and then optimization. Just how do we reduce costs? How do we a critical thing, it maybe the answer is we do all of this incredibly advanced stuff and we create a pound of whole steak that is just absolutely perfect and it costs $1,000. It's not gonna change the world. It needs to hit that price parity. And so that's a question of optimization in processes, it's cost reduction in terms of ingredients. That has to be a part of this as well. So we need to be eyes on the prize. As I say, it's not just getting the taste right, it's getting cost right, it's getting the taste, texture, all of these things right. And it's making sure that this is going to be something that is good for people, that is going to be healthy and nutritious. And nutritious means not just protein content, but it's all the other good stuff that animal source foods has that delivers for nutrition for the human population. So yeah, it's a yes. It's all of those things, which is hard, right? And that's why I say we're early in the journey, but AI hopefully can help us accelerate that journey to reach products that nail all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, it's a grand challenge for a reason. So very excited to see what comes out of this this open call. Just a final question, sort of parting thoughts. There are a wealth of resources on the Grand Challenge website. Applicants have seen the selection criteria, the submission form. They've seen the resources that you've developed, the one pager as well. But anything else that you'd like applicants to keep in mind as they develop their proposals, or final thoughts for them?
As I said, I know there's a lot of interest. People read sustainable protein and also see the livestock side of things. That is an area of focus also of the Earth Fund. So if you do have those ideas, as much as I've talked on this call about the alternative protein side of things, our approach to sustainable protein is an all of the above approach. It also includes livestock. So send them in through the wild card, for sure. And the invite is, the Bezos Earth Fund is all about risk taking. It's all about bold bets, and what we really would love from this grand challenge is not those incremental changes that will probably happen anyway in startups, research, or in university labs or research organizations in the next couple of years. Use this opportunity to think out of the box, to try riskier stuff and more transformational ideas, because that's really the opportunity here with this. We are in this decisive decade. Frankly, the more you look at the data on climate and nature, what happens in the next 18 months is absolutely critical for the planet's future. And so don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to be bold. That's exactly what we need. We need you to be bold. So think out of the box and talk to different people. Most of the greatest discoveries happen when kind of two disciplines join, when people from completely different sides of science talk together and come up with ideas, or when a company in this sector talks to a completely different sector. Those are the kinds of things where the magic happens. And so find as many of those opportunities as you can and surprise me. That's what I'm after.
Surprise you. I love that. Okay, well, a huge thank you to you, Andy, for joining and sharing your expertise and just your time. As a reminder to anyone watching, applications are due by 5:59 p.m. Eastern Time on July 30th. Applicants must select a single focus area for their proposal. So it could be sustainable proteins, it could also be power grid optimization, biodiversity conservation, or a wildcard solution that does not fit into one of those three areas. We're so excited to be surprised and to see what ideas everyone has for how AI might be able to accelerate progress. For more on the Grand Challenge, please visit aiforclimateandnature.org. Thank you again, Andy, and we look forward to seeing everyone's ideas.
Thanks a lot.